include cash and cash equivalents, receivables, inventories for resale, prepaid expenses, and tangible capital assets. So for 2020, the district had $13.1 million of cash and cash equivalents compared to $16.5 million in 2019. You need to remember that included in the cash and cash equivalents is approximately $1.6 million of school generated funds. The next line item there is receivables. And as you can see, in 2020, the district had $3.8 million of receivables compared to $1.3 million in prior year. So a change of approximately $2.6 million. And we do have a slide on the next, the next slide is a breakdown of that receivable. So we will discuss it. Inventories for resale, you can see is very consistent to prior year. Prepaid expenses is consistent to prior year. And as you would expect, the largest line item there is the tangible capital assets. So in 2020, the district had $133.8 million of tangible capital assets compared to $113.9 million in 2019. So really, this is a combination of things, but there was $24 million of additions during the year, so capital additions during the year, $19.8 million related to the work in progress, mostly related to the Ann Roberts Young Elementary School, and then there was $1.3 million in purchases related to school buses due to the fires. And this is all netted with depreciation to get you to the change of $19.9 million. And we do have a slide breaking down each financial statement caption for the tangible capital assets in the next few slides. It is important to note that cash and cash equivalents, receivables, and inventory are financial assets, whereas prepaid expenses and tangible capital assets are non-financial assets. So non-financial assets are assets that have an economic life that extends beyond a year and is generally for consumption or intended for consumption by the district. So if you could go to the next slide there, Brenda.
Slide 5.
Yeah, it would be slide 5 or page 5, slide 5. So this is a breakdown of the receivables. So the district had, as I said before, $3.8 million of receivables in 2020. As you can see, the majority of that change came from the due from the ministry. So there was approximately $2.6 million of receivables that was related to accruing for receivables from the ministry for the building of the Ann Roberts Young Elementary School. So it's sitting, like what you'll see is you'll see it sitting in the due from the ministry, or what you'll see is due from the ministry, and then you'll also see in accounts payable the same amount, the same change. The next line item there is the other receivables, and that's very consistent with prior year. So then again, there again, you have your total receivables through $3.8 million in 2020 compared to $1.3 million in 2019. So a change of $2.5 million sitting in your receivables. If you could please go to page 6, Brenda. So page 6 is the tangible capital assets of the district. As you can see, this is made up of sites, buildings, building work in progress, furniture work in progress, vehicles, computer hardware, computer software. And what you'll see at the very bottom is there, the total tangible capital assets for the district was $198.2 million in 2020 compared to $174.2 million in 2019, so approximately a $23 million change. This is before depreciation. So after you take your accumulated amortization of $64.2 million, leaves you a total tangible capital assets net of approximately $133.8 million. The few of the larger line items that I want to discuss, as you can see, buildings has increased by approximately $1.9 million. So there was purchase of new portables, construction of the Burt Bowes track, and a paving for the Taylor Elementary School sitting in the buildings. And the buildings work in progress, as you expect, is related to the Ann Roberts Young Elementary School, so the construction of that school. So that'll be moved into buildings once it's totally completed, and then it'd be amortized. And then sitting in vehicles, as you can see, that is changed by approximately $1.2 million. And really, this is just the replaces for the buses due to the fire. Brenda, can you please move to page 7, please? Thank you. The next slide there. So liabilities of the next slide is the liabilities of the school districts. So this again is still the statement of financial positions, but looking at your liabilities. So your liabilities include accounts payable and accrued liabilities, unearned revenue, employee future benefits, and this results with a total liabilities before deferred revenue, deferred capital revenue of approximately $7.7 million in 2020 compared to $9.1 million in 2019. Included in the accounts payable and accrued liabilities is approximately $2.5 million payable relating to the Ann Roberts Young Elementary School. Of that amount is approximately $1.8 million of holdbacks. KPMG does a significant amount of testing over accounts payable and accrued liabilities to ensure that all liabilities are picked up. Perfect. Brenda, can you move to page 8? So next slide there is the statement of financial position again, but it's looking at the deferred revenue. So there's deferred revenue and deferred capital revenue. Deferred revenue is funding provided for a specific purpose. It is recognized into revenue when the stipulations are met. Deferred revenue includes funds from the annual facility grants, scholarships, school generated funds, community link, First Nation transportation, and other miscellaneous funding with stipulations. Deferred capital revenue is funding provided for a capital purpose. It is recognized into revenue on the same basis of amortization. So the district in 2020 had total deferred revenues of approximately $110.7 million compared to $92.3 million in 2019. So a change of approximately $18.3 million. Let's move on to the next slide there. Perfect. Thank you, Brenda. So the next slide here is a summary schedule of operations. So as you can see from left to right, we have budget 2020, actual 2020, actual 2019. And as you can see, revenues, the budgeted revenue is very consistent to the current year and above 2019. If you look at the expenses, your budget expenses was approximately $81.9 million. The actual revenues or actual expenses was approximately $1 million less, and then you had your actual for 2019, which was significantly less than in 2020. So in the end, if you look at the actual for 2020, you had revenues of $80.3 million. You deduct your expenses of $80.6 million, and you have a deficit of $246,000. So if you look from left to right, you can see that the budget in 2020 had a deficit, a projected deficit of $1.7 million. The actual deficit came in lower at $246,000, and then this is also less than the actual in 2019, sitting at $739,000. Perfect. So if we move on to the schedule of changes and an accumulated surplus, so all of the deficits and surpluses, they flow down into the changes. So in 2020, the district had operating fund changes of a deficit of $952,000. The capital fund was a surplus of $705,000, and this left us with the accumulated surplus, accumulated deficit of $246,000 in 2020. Some of the items to note was that $1.7 million was transferred from the operating fund to the capital fund for capital asset purchases. In addition, $94.9 million was transferred from the special purpose fund to the capital fund for capital assets purchases as well. So again, these changes then flow into the next slide there, which show our ending accumulated surplus. So the district had ending operating fund surplus of $3.8 million in 2020. The capital fund came in at $26.4 million, and this left the district with the cumulative surplus of $30.2 million of surplus. And as you can see, if you look at the actual 2019 for prior year at 30.4, you see that the change there is the $236,000 of deficit during the year. So the next slide there is really, if you could scroll on to the next slide there, Brenda, perfect. So the next slide there is just is really the significant accounting policies and practices that are disclosed in the financial statements. So there have been no changes to any of the significant accounting policies noted in the financial statements compared to prior year. So they're all the same policies. The last slide there is just to open it up for any questions. I'm happy to take any questions on the financial statements.
So Ben, due to this kind of auditing work for a number of school districts, do you find anything within our school district that doesn't align with what's going on in other districts?
Yeah, we do work with quite a few school districts in our local office as well as in our national office, and overall, all the policies in place are really consistent with the other school districts. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Just giving people's brains time to work through and sift through all those figures to see if we've got any other questions.
Definitely. I just want to say how great it is to work with the school district and the finance team.
Appreciate that. All right, are there any other questions? All right, I think you might be off the hook. The rest of us, but you might be.
Okay. Definitely, if there's any questions or concerns, reach out to myself or Corey at any time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Right. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, trustee input and celebrations. We'll start with Trustee Campbell.
Through Chair, before we move on, the board does need to pass a motion regarding the financial statements and accept the financial statements for publication and reporting to the ministry.
That was quite important.
Pardon?
That was quite important earlier.
Yeah, it was. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem, sorry.
Okay. All right. So
I need to make a motion to accept the audited financial statements?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
The 2019, 2020
Financial statements presented by KPMG.
seconded by Bill. Any questions?
Is this when we also, is this the time when we also hire the next year's person, or you come to us for?
That's done. We did that last time. For
So
2 years.
Oh.
we, when we did the request for proposals, we did a 3-year commitment with KPMG.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry. There. So I'm going to call the question now. Does anybody need the motion read back? Or are we good? All right. Calling the question, all in favor of the motion to accept the auditor's report? Motion is carried. Now we'll move on to 12.0.
So, do they need signatures or something?
Yes. So you do, well, first, so that now the process is that Angela and I need to actually finalize the financial statements, and then we'll present them, myself, Stephen, and the board chair sign the statements. Then we need to have them submitted to the Ministry of Education by September 30th. So then, and then once we submit them, then we'll publish them on our website and have them.
Thanks for clarifying that. All right, Ida, you, celebrations.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, one of my celebrations is I've been having my grandsons this last little while, so I've been taking them to the school every day. And it's so nice to see the kids out there playing, even though we have to be on the other side of the fence. It's still really nice to get out there and see all the kids and then back to school.
Thank you. All right, Trustee Evan,
Oh, I'm next.
you're next.
Well, I just, I touched base with all my liaison schools, and staff, just to, welcome them back. Also, I've been in touch with, my kids, of course, started school this week as well, one at Central and one at the high school. And then I've, been lucky enough to talk to some other kids that have started at the high school. And interestingly enough, everybody really likes the quarter system. The kids, they seem to really like it. And so I've talked to about 5 kids, just, here and there. And they have all said that they have enough time in class to get their work done. They get all the questions answered from the teachers, and they have so far liked it. It's only been a week and a bit, but so I think that's really great. And kudos to North Peace for getting all that done, because I can't imagine the stress that caused. But so far, everybody seems to really like that I've talked to. It's only a small sample, but so far they like that quarter system. They think it's great. So, and I've had nobody's reached out to me with any concerns. Just a couple questions, but around the announcement, but I know Brenda's going to touch on that. So, yeah, that's it.
Nicole Gillis.
So we all participated in the retreat at the end of August, and then I also attended the labor management meeting last week. And as far as celebrations, I definitely celebrated my children heading back to school. And in small school like Hudson's Hope, we are very fortunate all the time. I can find things that are great about our school, but the smaller numbers have obviously really, are shining through right now, because the cohorts are, it's almost like normal. I will say that at the labor management meeting, and we say it, and it's a bit of a cliche, but I'm surprised at, you have all these different unions, all these different representatives, and everybody there knows that this is tough times and lots of weirdness. And there is really collaboration. Everybody just is so excited that they're back to work and the kids get to go to school. That just seems to be everybody's priority. Because, you could get up in it, about the cleaning and the extra hours and the influx of kids coming and going, and how do we know how many numbers, and there's so many different variables, but it seems like everybody is just, there's not a lot of drama, and we're just handling it really well, and I'm so happy to see that.
Natalie.
For their meetings I've been, I did attend the Northern Ontario Branch NIBE meeting. Didn't have to drive to Prince George. Surprisingly, there were like 46, 49 attendants. So I was well attended. It was good. Yeah. Attended the Clearview Arena meeting. There's trying to get a protocol up and going, because it's obviously connected with the school and everything, and questions around that, because I think sometimes this one size fits all doesn't quite always fit all, because rural and slower numbers, whatever. So they're working on that. Attended the Clearview Pack. I agree with Nicole, it's nice to have a smaller school. And I think too, for celebrations, it's interesting, I talked to some teachers and one that teaches the younger kids. Said it was so nice, she got an email from a parent saying their kids were so almost not scared, but the anxiety was pretty high going back to school with everything. And it just kind of disappeared. They're happy, it's all good. So this parent sent the teacher, thank you for making it a normal tussle.
Thank you. David?
I've been in contact with most of my the schools. Out at Upper Halfway, we touched on that one. Just been in contact with Buick. So we'll start with Buick. They were hoping to have 24. They've got 21 kids there now. Doing very well. They're really happy with it. He's ecstatic with what's going on. He is a little concerned with the early hours that they get there, but they're off early, so gives him. So that's just the way the busing system. That's kind of the luck of the draw. The trip to a week ago today, I guess, to Upper Halfway was nicely successful. I enjoyed that very much. It's a good meeting, and I'd like to see that move forward. And then been in contact with, I talked to Jacqueline, and both schools are doing very well, and she's really happy. So hopefully I'm going to talk to Mr. Longley soon. This is fun. I wasn't able to use that today.
Thank you. Mr. Soul?
All right, so last Friday afternoon, I went to see Mr. Paul's high school. We had a little sit down and he says everything's going well there. The big thing he noticed is everybody, students, staff of all types, instead of being tired by Friday, he said we're tired by Wednesday. He said everybody's just was tired. Okay? But it went good, he said, and he has very good attendance. I talked to Lori at Ambrose. It's going very well. She's talked to everybody that isn't there. They know what's going on. And I also went up Upper Halfway, and the pleasure of going to the only school I'd never been to. Okay? And I have a new appreciation for them.
How far that is?
Yes.
Oh my God, is it still there?
I honestly thought that it was very close to Upper Halfway and was ready to stop there. And then we kept going and going and going. So I definitely, seeing those roads and everything, I understand more. Okay? But it's going to get better and good.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to go through everything because it's been very busy, but some of my celebrations, I'm going to echo some of what you already heard Nicole say from the player management meeting. There was a constructive and positive tone at the meeting. There was a concern raised, and we already dealt with that. There was certainly a mutual appreciation of the efforts on all parts of labor and management team giving back and forth, so it was quite exciting to see. I was really missing being with kids, so Friday I had to visit schools, so I dropped into Ann Roberts Young, but before I went inside, I had the pleasure of watching them lay grass turf. And it was kind of exciting to see the process for laying the turf, and you might have a school field that's level, and that was kind of exciting to see. I had been in Ann Roberts Young before school started while they were still unpacking, and there was a completely different feel to be in the building when there was kids and staff in it. The building's alive now. It's got life to it. It's quite exciting to see. The other thing that I noted, I had been out that way previously, and the crosswalks to the traffic circle, everywhere you look, there's kind of a crosswalk, and I really wondered what the pedestrian flow would be like there. And so I watched for a little bit that morning, and the kids were really good at stopping, and I was quite surprised because when I just looked at it before there was actually people using it, I thought it might be a bit confused. It was only me that was confused. I visited Beldonald on Friday, and there were very excited kids. I will confess that I poked my nose in my granddaughter's classroom. She kind of ignored me, but that's okay. While I was there, I looked at the upgrades that were done in relation to the pension report that we had just prior to the end of the year, and the upgrades look quite good. So they're definitely using the space that they weren't previously using, and the staff report feeling a positive difference in that space. For those, thank you to everybody that was able to come with their normal t-shirts and get a picture of the track, and we're moving forward on that. The track looks good. I haven't touched base further than that with those at this point. Margaret Ma did move to YouTube assemblies, and it's quite a lot of fun to watch what they're trying to do and watch two people modeling, okay, I'm trying something new and different. They've had fantastic harvests from their growing boxes. Their potato crop was much better than mine. And it's Pirate Day on Thursday, so I'm hoping to stop in for Pirate Day. And I wanted to say a thank you to Stephen for organizing the media tour of Mount Murray prior to the school opening, with the CJBC doing a presentation that helps set, I think it helps set positive tone for startup. The other thing I want you to know is we have had a positive COVID exposure at Frank Ross Elementary in Dawson Creek. I have reached out to Chad Anderson, who's the chair there, and we've been sharing information back and forth so that we can learn from his experience in the event that we have one in our district. So there's a good level of cooperation between the two districts. All right, moving on, let's look at the minutes of the regular board meeting, August 31st, 2020, and we'll go to pages 5 to 10 in the package. Please have a mover and a seconder with you stating your name.
Bill Snow.
Seconder, please.
Nicole Gillis.
Thank you. And we'll now take a look. Are there any errors or omissions after we've had an opportunity to look at those minutes? Seeing nothing that indicates that we need to make any changes, can I ask all those in favor?
In favor.
Thank you, Ida. And we will look at business arising from those minutes now. And you should, in your agenda package, have an action item list. There it is. So it looks like things are accounted for. We'll follow up with facilities that are committed to the whole meeting on October the 5th. Is there any other business not on an action item sheet from those minutes that we need to attend to before we move on? Doesn't look like there's further business arising from the minutes. We'll move on to 6.0, which is approval of the excerpts of the regular board meeting on June 22nd. Please have Madeline.
Bill Snow.
And Bill Snow is seconder. Again, are there any errors or omissions related to those excerpts? All in favor?
In favor.
Thank you, Ida. All right, we're looking at announcements and reminders for reviews, additions, and changes. We are still looking for trustees to sign up to attend SUPAC meetings. Sharon Shell did circulate that. Nicole and I, Madeline and I are going to attend next week, but we are looking for 2 people for October. So that is a, Sharon Shell sent that out, and we're able to sign up. We ask that people sign up for 2 if you're unable to. If you let me know, then we figure out who's going to cover that. We would like to have people there. Leah, sorry,
Is that here at the board office, or is it also? Is it a mix?
The
Go ahead.
SUPAC is gonna be the DPAC executive
Mhm.
here with the superintendent and the trustees, if they like to come in person and work, a couple of trustees. The rest will be on Zoom.
and no lunch.
No food.
Lunch to Teresa's for.
Why none? It's tomorrow, by the way, not next week.
Oh, okay, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we're waiting until next, who showed up next week?
No,
It's the-
sorry,
no,
I
it's
don't
the
have the SUPAC.
29th, I think.
29th.
Which is next week.
It's the fourth Tuesday is when we do our DPAC. It's the fourth Tuesday of the month, and tomorrow's the fourth Tuesday.
Okay, Sharon has it in here on the 29th, so we'll connect after.
Okay, we'll connect after
So
and fix that.
we will-
What's your schedule tomorrow, Madeline?
I won't be able to.
That might explain why we didn't get a Zoom invite, right?
We'll talk about it.
Well, it's already scheduled for next week, we should just do that, and we'll still have our DPAC tomorrow. I mean, sorry, our DPAC.
Correct.
Interrupting your meeting, but we'll do our DPAC tomorrow, and then we'll.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for your flexibility. Erin?
For some reason, I usually write it down. I don't remember that email from Sharon, because I usually sign up. I usually sign up and then I write it down. And so I'm checking my calendar for, because I sign up at the end, because I can't, I work during.
I'd say it's about 4 weeks ago now, she sent it out, so just maybe.
Can she
send her-
resend it with
I'll ask her
everybody?
to
Because
resend.
I need to double check to make sure that I sign
You
up.
did sign up for some, your name is on it.
I didn't
I
write
broke
it
in your
down.
email and.
I know, see, this is the issue, I didn't write it down, and so I usually do, and that's why I'm all confused now.
Two, so that is- Leah, can I ask that you add October 30th as Orange Shirt Day down on events, because there are a number of.
September 30th.
Sorry, September 30th? Thank you. September 30th, Orange Shirt Day. There are a number of events planned around the district to recognize and that particular event, and I was planning on wearing my orange t-shirt to the 29th. Is there any other additions to the announcements and reminders?
Yeah. Can somebody, or I can if we need, look into seeing Remembrance Day there?
No,
I'm assuming there's no ceremony.
we don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's on there as a placeholder and we'll.
We normally do a wreath kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if we're getting them and just putting them over there across the road kind of thing or something.
We'll figure that. I was actually talking to somebody about that the other day, and I'm not even really sure anybody's kind of figured out what that's gonna look like yet. It is something that we'll get figured out.
Thank you.
So. We'll move on to item number 8, our superintendent's report.
So, and Leah, can I get you to hit the default position to pull up the screen? Looks like it's whack a little bit, that's okay. Thank you. All right, so superintendent's report for September. Lots going on. Just a reminder to the public that at any time you can find all kinds of updates, including parent letters, resources, medical health information on our school website, prn.bc.ca. It has a specific link and tab there for COVID. However, I also wanted to update the board and public a little bit on our enrollment as far as we know it now. And I just remind everybody that these are all in flux and it's very early days in terms of our funding and those sorts of things. That won't be sorted out until basically the first week of October. But I did want to give you a bit of a snapshot, which indicates that School District 60 is at about 96% return in terms of in-school attendance. This compares to the provincial average of about 85%. And so our district's doing particularly well there, but I did want to break down a couple of the numbers. So first of all, we do appear to be slightly down from our spring projections overall, in terms of the overall student population. And I'll just remind you that we have about 140 students across the district who are just taking a few more days or a few more weeks to transition back to school. They're included in our school numbers, in our FTE count, but we have a learning plan in place. And in fact, those learning plans were sent out today to those families. It's a weekly plan broken up by primary, intermediate, and middle school. And so we're supplying some educational plans while they take a bit more time before they come into school. We are not sure yet how many families have moved into homeschooling, but overall we're pleased with the level of attendance. Our Key Learning Center has definitely picked up quite a bit of business over the last month, primarily from out of district. They're actually heading towards about 400 FTE just in elementary alone. And that's full time. And so we've been adding capacity to that school. And they're servicing about 100 to 150 local students and about close to 300 out of district students. And as I've noted here, out of district registrations for K-9 will now be waitlisted in order to ensure the delivery of programming and that local students will continue to be able to register. So we're prioritizing local students, and we have the capacity to handle the registrations that we have. Once again, all of that is still playing out. We'll have more concrete numbers and actual concrete information at the October board meeting. Moving into our framework for enhancing student learning. Under intellectual development around the district, we're going to be facilitating and supporting some assessments around literacy and numeracy. Overall, it's been about a 6-month gap for many of our students since they've been in school. Preliminary assessments, certainly back in June, indicated that there was quite a gap developing in reading comprehension and numeracy, and so we're going to make sure that we do this on a bit of a district scale and see how we can redirect resources and programming to help especially those students that have developed those gaps in learning. We're pleased to announce that through our Learning Services program, we have close to 21 teachers in primary who have signed up for some professional development for what's called thinking classrooms. And this is, at that age level, it's basically about the premise and the basic questions to develop critical thinking, and for them to be part of the design of the classroom, part of the design of their learning. And so it follows a structure that's been researched, and we have a facilitator coming up to our district to help with that. I mentioned that we have a transition program in place, and again, those weekly plans have been sent out to families. Also a reminder then that we've given a deadline as a district and as a board of the mid third week of October in terms of parents making that transition back into school. Several of them have already started to send their students, and we'll continue to see that over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Trustee David Scott Moncrief mentioned Buick School, and I'm very pleased to share this picture of seeing some life at Buick School. And it was 21 or 22 students, and it's a full learning program. And the teachers are going out there 4 days a week and offering a full complement of educational services, including Strong Start. So the Buick School is alive and well with programming this year. Under human and social development, a number of initiatives are in place. We've started to add additional capacity, and particularly in relation, and we'll be adding more in terms of some federal funding that we're proposing tonight. And our Director of Instruction, Carlene Andrews, is being responsible for our social emotional learning department, is working with all the schools in terms of their school-based teams and ensuring we're being aware of not only the needs of our students, but also of our teachers and all staff, EAs and all staff. Under operations, I will be pulling out a recommended motion to the board as part of my report in terms of the federal funding to School District 60 for 2020-2021. And there is attached to the public board documentation tonight some information around that funding, how much it is, and what the general areas of allocation are allowed to be. Just noting that I mentioned some support for staff, and so there's a workshop that was held on September 17th around managing change. And so you'll continue to see these types of workshops and services offered throughout the district, often by your own people. So some of the capacity we've added to the district is specifically for our staff, for our parents, and for our kids. Just a picture here of our new teacher orientation. We were able to do that in a safe way during COVID by offering it over 2 evenings, 1 week apart. And it went extremely well. We have approximately 31 new teachers, and they were able to do a tour by bus. And as you can see, they were socially distanced when we did a tour of Anne Roberts Young. We provided everyone with a mask, and overall very pleased and excited to have new teachers in our district. You mentioned Upper Halfway, David, and Bill, it was the first time out there, and if I won't show the whole thing, but our plant superintendent, Chad Cushway, is also a bit of a drone pilot, and so he brought his toys out there, and we get to see a bit of an aerial view around Upper Halfway School, which a lot of people don't get to see. So it's actually a beautiful setting, but what's going to be very exciting is some possible upgrades, enhancements, and a wrap around the school, and we're asking for other facilities and working with the Ministry of Education on that. But I've been out there many times, and they have a little ice rink that they've actually made significant improvements to, as well as a sledding hill, and I'm looking forward to continue to add capacity to that school. That's almost a brand new mobile home there as a teacherage, and there's a cabin back in the trees as well for staff. So there are 2 teacherages out on this location. Under Truth and Reconciliation, just to give everyone the heads up, we'll be working with our Board of Education and the public in terms of what's called an equity scan. And this is to gain feedback from the public as well as staff on how we are servicing our Indigenous students. This is different from the LEA. The LEA was with our Indigenous bands, specifically our rights holders. The equity scan is for a broad consultation with the public around how we're servicing our Indigenous students. There is a document here you can download. Just a heads up, it's from 2019-20, but the basic structure of the plan and the questions they use are the same. And also on that, if you remember, I was sharing some background or historical learning information about our Indigenous peoples in British Columbia. Please have a look at that leadership structures on Indigenous peoples, and it's just to kind of gain our understanding as we move along this journey together. Finally, in our Take 3 sections, the celebrations around the district. Just easy to forget the sheer amount of work that staff and parents and everyone have put into this opening, and it was very exciting. Very disappointing at the same time not to have lots of people and staff down there with the kids. During these COVID times, that's the way it goes. But Brighton Bennett principal and Melissa DeGrood vice principal have indicated that it's been a very successful startup, and there's lots of excitement in the air. A reminder that you can click on this to get a tour, a virtual tour of Anne Roberts Young, and this is an image of their logo, which is beautifully painted onto the gym floor, as well as around the gym and part of the new Anne Roberts Young sweat. That's my more static presentation, and I will also then point out as part of the superintendent's report that we're breaking out a recommended motion to accept community coaches at Clearview School and Northview Secondary School, and then also to break out a separate motion around the federal funding. But I'll stop there for any questions on the superintendent's report.
Can we go through your report section by section?
You bet.
Go back up to the top and see what questions are related to each section.
You bet.
Right. So before we do that discussion, can I have a motion to accept the report with some items being pulled up for recommendation.
Karen Evans, so go ahead.
David's got more quick.
Thank you. And now we will move forward with the discussion. So the enrollment update, any questions related to that?
Well, it kind of comes up later again when you talk about the learning plans. How long, I know there's a deadline for those transition, not sure. Is that when the learning plans stop as well?
Correct. And at that point, parents need to make that decision. Are they gonna go with distance at the Key Learning Center, or are they gonna come back into the schools?
Erin?
Just wondering how, with the key, I'm guessing that, they obviously had to add staff capacity. Is that local staff that they hired, or did they hire from out of the district as well to do, their, make sure that they've got hiring?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First of all, the Key Learning Center had enough capacity to add a number of students to begin with. That's how that kind of programming works in the first place. So they're able to sort of adjust with increases. However, the degree of increase required adding staffing, and that's local. So we've assigned for now, for example, some district TTOCs that may end up becoming permanent in that role, and we have postings out as well.
I was going to add, for being at the labor management meeting, there's been extra clerical time that is
As well.
added to deal with the registration. My one concern when I look at those numbers, we're running a different model in Buick Creek, and we were counting on admin to be supervising in Buick Creek. And that would be an area to really watch, would be the recruit for those administrators there with that increase. Erin?
Okay, and how many letters of permission, speaking of staff, do we have in our district currently?
We have 7 letters of permission. They are primarily not carryovers, but same positions from the previous year. And you'll remember, Trustee Evans, that we do have to apply each year to get those letters of permission if there were no other qualified teachers available. And so basically holding steady, which is a number that is not out of order with previous years. Overall, I will say though, HR-wise, we've been pleasantly surprised with the number and quality of applications we've been receiving since January. We're in a much stronger position now than we've been in years, but I'll always add to that, it's still never enough.
The still real area of concern is our
TTOCs, correct.
How many positions are we open right now?
We're only down to about 3 to 4 FTE positions needed. And those are mainly part-time ones for around prep positions, some specialty positions, but we're in a better position now for unfilled positions than we've been in years.
And did our 101 get filled?
Our 101 has teachers covered for each classroom division, yes. We're hoping to add another teacher because of the need for ELL out there, but we do have Jacqueline, the vice principal, able to help service that school in that regard.
Any other questions related to the first area of Stephen's report? Framework for enhancing student learning, Erin?
Question about the FSA. Do we, is there any hypothesis or theory as to how the FSAs are gonna come out this year compared to previous years because of the spring and those grade 3 and the grade 6 cohorts kind of not continuing the school and then now into the FSA?
Yeah, and so ministry is proceeding and the district is preparing to roll out the FSAs as planned in October. They've extended the timeline during which these assessments can take place, but there has been no change or cancellation of that process. And I think it was 2 years ago they moved it to a fall assessment. And so by every account and from the information we receive, that is proceeding.
Is there any talk, I guess, on what the assumption is for if the numbers are gonna be lower, on average compared to previous years? Are we kind of looking for that province-wide, have you heard? If you know what I'm kind of asking?
It's a good question. We can certainly make some assumptions. I will let you know though that the assessment itself was revamped considerably two years ago. So the baseline that we have for the FSE now is quite limited. because they start a new baseline and we'll revamp all of the questions. But that's, I'll be interested in definitely bringing back that information to the board.
Yeah, so I'd be curious to see, you know, if there was a dip in numeracy and literacy because of that. And so might you check later in your report as
Absolutely.
well.
And just stop me at any time if you have any further questions.
Further about the federal funding. With regards to the equity scan, I'm just going to ask if you can pass that around. I pulled a couple of pages out of what Stephen has referenced there. And I will be asking Stephen, once they have connected and mapped out kind of their timeline and an understanding of the time commitment. One of the pillars, as we talked about in advance, is the equity scan. One for each of you is the equity scan. And basically, in that equity scan, there's the pillar of governance. And we will need to, as trustees, be involved in that process. But I'm not going to ask people to step up for something until we know kind of how much involvement we're looking at and the number of meetings and things. But when we look towards the concept of working on policy and things like that, and we look at that equity and governance piece, that will overlap into some of the other areas that we have to do. So that was just to draw your attention to those 2 pages of Stephen's report. I guess that was a liberty, sorry.
No, that's great.
I'll just make a comment on the Buick Creek not Buick Creek, the drone video.
Yeah.
That might be a good thing for Chad to do anytime he's out at those rural schools and put on the website. Because I haven't been to 101 like since my lawn mowing days with the district 20 years ago. And I bet you a lot of people have never seen the Hudson School. I think that'd be a great thing on our website. And that drone just really showcases the whole area.
Thank you. And he has been, and will continue to profile those then.
Yeah. That's cool.
So then in my next part of my report, I would just ask, staff is making a recommendation for a motion from trustees that the Board of Education approve the attached community coach requests from Clearview Elementary, Junior, Secondary, and Northeast Secondary Schools.
Have a motion.
No, we have to pass the whole
The whole
Sorry,
his
before.
report.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we've already motioned to remove that.
Yeah, sorry.
So we can call the question.
Coaches, yeah, we've got the coaches, we've got the federal. Is there any other motions we have to close?
No.
Okay. All right, can I have call the question on accepting Stephen's report, please? Thank you. All right, we'll move now to looking at a recommendation regarding community coaches, first of all.
I'll make the motion, Aaron Evans,
Bill
to
Smith.
the Board of Education approve the attached community coach request from Clearview and Northeast.
Bill Snow.
Do you have time to get that, Leah? Okay, thank you. Calling the question, all in favor?
In favor.
Thanks, Ida.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, you can.
Sorry. It's okay. I know, I do that too. When are we gonna, is there any other requests? Like, is there a deadline for schools to get the requests in?
These can always come to the board at other times. This is more reflective of the rhythm and the diarized cycle when our executive assistant puts this information forward. This is also started in anticipation because, as you know, we don't have any official sports teams happening.
Right.
They're just making sure we have some things in place if and when that time comes.
Yeah, I brought this up when I was talking to Randy in high school, because I had seen that there was tryouts at the high school kind of thing. And what he was saying is even if they don't get to play it all this year, it's to preparation for the following to keep them playing. And then the grade 12 students, because other provinces are getting to play. So it keeps them playing right? So when if they go to school next year, university, they can get to play kind of thing, rather than not at all.
And I'll just respond that the district though is doing that while it follows the guidelines, which is around either within their learning groups or by wearing masks and avoiding physical contact.
BC School Sports Association did do an update as of September 10th. And so there were a few changes to what I had circulated to you previously. There's a lot of different schools that are finding ways to start kids. When I listened to Mom Marie's assembly this morning, he was running around taking names for cross country and soccer and organizing in school things. So that was exciting to see.
So I think that's being passed, and so then the second staff recommendation is around the plan for federal fund spending with the attachment. Staff recommendation is that the Board of Education approve in principle the general allocation for federal spending. Spending may have to be adjusted to available resources and capacity.
So when we take a look at what you've given us, Stephen, it's the Deputy Minister's Bulletin, and this one here. So could I have somebody follow up on the motion that Stephen's just asked us to make? Moved by David, seconded by Aaron. So we're going to move to be able to discuss that. Any discussion, any questions? Aaron?
I guess I just want to know, is this pretty average across this, across the province? How did they allocate it?
The categories that
Yeah, I
are
saw
laid out
that.
by the ministry definitely keep it fairly strict in terms of the areas. And I could definitely summarize by saying learning and health and safety.
Okay.
And in that regard, all in terms of how to mitigate some of the COVID restrictions and adding resources and capacity where possible.
So how did the ministry allocate it? Was it per student allocation for the districts?
It was minus a small holdback by the provincial government. And thank you for asking that. This is all contingent on us actually getting the money. So there's phase one is up until Christmas, and then phase two is after Christmas. There's no reason why we don't think we'll be getting all of this funding. We just need to have a plan.
So can you clarify the amount for phase one?
Well, it's 1.2, approximately 1.2 million. Yeah, and however, just to let you know that some of the, especially the staffing, extra staffing we're putting in place is for the year. And so they understand that even though there's two phases to the funding, a fair chunk of this is expenditures that will be for the entire year.
So do we have to break that down between cleaning costs and all that other stuff, like extra janitorial time? And so how stringent are they at that? How we break that down? Like how much extra staff time for our finance department in breaking that down?
Well, to answer your first part of your question, thank you. We'll be bringing back to the board a report by Christmas on how and in which areas, according to this documentation, we spent the funds. In terms of adding capacity, we've definitely looked at the priority was around adding teaching capacity, things like key learning center, district TTOCs, all those kinds of things. But additionally, of course, for example, health and safety, absolutely needed some additional capacity just because of the sheer amount of volume of work that was involved in that. But right now, other than what's listed in those categories and ideas, those are the pieces where we're going to have. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, well, one of the things, as you take a look at it, we as a board, in passing the recommendation, would be agreeing with the things that are down here. So does anybody see anything that isn't down here that they would like to see? That would make sense. And then when you look at the concept of the amount of money that's coming to us as a district, we see some suggestions as to how we're going to break this money out and prioritization of categories. So in looking at the recommendation as it's made and approving it, are you happy with the prioritization that's reflected in the documents that Stephen shared. And because the money is coming in 2 chunks, some of it we're not going to be able to see till later on. David?
How much of this is subject to change with October 25th?
Good question, other than I can say this is federal funds.
Okay, so that's fine. I just wanted to be sure.
I have every reason to believe that these are committed for the year.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion before I call the question? All in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. That recommendation is carried.
Thank you, Chair.
Moving on to the Secretary Treasurer's report now.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the first item on my report is a financial overview to August 31st, 2020. We're just in the process of revamping our monthly reports to the board. So I just have a verbal report today, and we'll have a revised report for the board with some more details on projections for the October board. So our operating revenue for August 31st, 2020 was $4,105,087. Our operating expenses for salary and benefits were $2,008,771. Service and supplies were $997,449 for a total operating expenses of $3,006,220, leaving a net operating revenue of $1,098,867. So these numbers comprise July and August. So those months are lower expenses due to school not being in session. So we'll start to see a revision of the net operating revenue, and typically we see an operating deficit in the fall, and then we start to see equalization around March and towards our amended annual budget numbers for June. So so far we're in good fiscal shape, and then we'll see how that develops with financial reportings going forward. So I just have a verbal report, that wasn't a handout. Thank you. So the next item on my report is the Human Resources Support Staff Summary, so you can see the support staff. And I'm just going to add an item under this in relation to our staffing. So the board will have seen the public announcement regarding the MCFD grants. So our 4 grants that we submitted for before and after programs were successful with Ministry of Children and Family Development. So overall, it was over $2.3 million that we were receiving as a district under those grant initiatives. But because of those grants, we'll be able to hire some additional QP staff. So we have some job descriptions prepared for before and after school personnel, and we'd be looking to our QP population to fill those positions. So we're excited that we'll have a bunch of new assignments hopefully in the coming months for those new programs that Ministry of Children and Family Development is going to fund. So next item on my list under Human Resources is Staff Appreciation Week. So the week of October 5th is Staff Appreciation Week. So we as a district like to recognize the hard work of our staff. And so there's a card for trustees to sign. And facility staff will help us do the recognition to each of the schools and their staffs. And lastly, on my report is a recommended motion around public sector executive compensation freeze. So BCPC advised districts that there is a compensation freeze, and they've requested that boards of education pass the recommended motion that is there on my report. All right. So that is my report, respectfully submitted.
Ida, do you want to come in and sign the Appreciation Week card, or would you like one of us to sign on your behalf?
I will come in and sign it.
Okay, so it will be with Leah.
Okay.
Okay. So can I have a motion to accept Brenda's report recognizing the collective?
I'll accept it, please. Bill Snow.
Erin, second. Sorry, Nicole, she beat you. Okay. Any discussion of any of the items up until our recommendation, which we'll discuss?
I just want to congratulate Brenda and the staff for on that MCFD grant. It's a bit of a headache, and glad that we managed to secure it for all 4 of our locations that we asked for, which I think is really great.
Very good.
If I could just add also to the human resources piece, I mentioned additional teaching staff, and I'll just also let you know that there will be significant additional hours also from QB staff required for additional supervision, playground transition time, and that's a portion that's mentioned in the federal funding.
Yeah.
Also with the human resources one there, didn't they hire several extra custodians for the schools?
And that as well.
Yes.
And there's not, that doesn't reflect here.
So we hired additional custodians in the spring, and then we're hiring more custodians. So that's definitely part of both the provincial funding allocation dollars and the federal dollars. It's part of our spending plan. So
We'll either show up next time or some of them are actually already hired.
maybe with every time frame goes through. Some of them will have started, but most of them, you know, we're finalizing the staffing as we saw the number of students that came back and the requirements that we needed. And we just received confirmation of the grants last week. So I still need to meet with the administrators regarding timeframes, how we can get the numbers. But we feel that 3 out of the 4 will be able to get started for January, and then we'll go from there.
And I must tell you, the 2 schools on the visit last week, both of them said it was very nice to have someone there during the day.
Yes, and that's great. They really appreciate our TV staff. That's excellent.
All right, calling the question, all in favor? Okay, that report is accepted. We will move on to look at the recommendation that Brenda has given. Could I have somebody?
Is that just for the superintendent?
Yeah.
In that case, I'll move it.
All right, we'll move that. Seconder, please. David? You can speak, then I'm gonna speak.
So, this was some correspondence we received from the BCPC regarding an executive compensation freeze. It applies to the secretary treasurer and the assistant superintendents. But because there's a recognition that the superintendent is under the purview of the Board of Education. But they were suggesting that also the boards consider this motion and include the superintendent in the freeze. But I just want to point out that it's for the 2021 performance year, which is for the January 1st time frame forward. So it doesn't affect any compensation plans that there were previously. So the percentage increase, etc. is on that.
Thank you. So I did manage to get a summary of Thursday's board chair call to you done today. And I kind of had waited to see if the BCSTA was sending one out this morning, and they didn't, so I typed up my notes. This is a particularly contentious issue throughout the province, partly for the Brenda's mentioned that the superintendent is the only employee that the board picks, chooses, and hires and decides the compensation for. And when you look at the documentation that accompanied that was sent out from Carol James and things like that, they recognize the autonomy of the school board around that. So there are some boards that this is, you're pecking away at district autonomy and you're taking that particular stance. The other stance that's being taken is somewhat, is that this has got a political element to it, in the sense that we're joining with all of the other parties that have frozen wages, and it looks good if we go alongside. There are some boards that are not bringing this motion forward. I've gone back and forth and would like to listen to sort of where other people are at. There's no danger in passing it, but it doesn't really do anything.
I understand it doesn't do anything. My concern with passing it, even though I moved it to get the discussion going, I'm curious to see if when the next provincial council, if somebody brings up a late motion, because our superintendents across the province, because particularly this year, I'm not sure any of them took their full vacation time. And to pass a motion like this at this time, I think it sort of undermines the work that superintendents do and secretary treasurers do in our school districts. And so I know that if we pass it, it doesn't actually really mean anything, but I probably won't vote in favor of it because I don't think I don't think it's the problem. Yeah, BCPC shouldn't necessarily at this time be saying blanket freezing our executive staff payroll. It brings me back to the administrative savings of 30%, those days, and I just I'm not, especially this year with all the work that our staff have been doing and not taking vacation, and now really the province is saying we don't appreciate you, thanks for coming out, sorry for your luck, and thanks for working really hard.
That is certainly a point of view. If you go back and look at some of the things that were changed, the transmission of this was Carol James made the app. It went to PSEC and PSEC sent it to BCPC to look at the piece that applies to us as school districts. And the rationale for putting this particular compensation freeze in place was that it's hard economic times for everybody. And I believe the figure that was used in the papers, I can't find them in front of me, was the concept of this freeze applies to people who are earning a wage of over $150,000 and above. And so part of the rationale for the freeze was that there's other people out there that are really hurting a lot, and these people are still making. Not saying agree, I'm just saying that that was part of the rationale in the documentation that came. And because I was part of the board call on Thursday, you guys might not have heard this information or saw this till you looked at your board package, but I've kind of been doing this and this and this and back and forth. And how do I say this? We've had a lot of value out of the ministry in terms of MCFD and all of the other things. It doesn't really do anything. But will it be noticed if we take a stance? I don't know.
Well, the other question too is that it's unfunded, right?
Yeah.
And not, I don't know as it's ever really been totally funded, but I know in the past, even with, the increases that we've provided in the past, they weren't funded. And so I think as a board, we can, look at it. It was the same when we decided our compensation, even as a board years ago. We decided not to take any increases, even though it was very minimal because of the economic times. And I think I agree with that. It takes the autonomy away, but I also think that, working 24/7 is not necessarily what our executive staff across the province have signed up for.
Nicole?
So I just need a little bit of background. Didn't we just unfreeze the wages? Or was that just for the administrative part? Because the principals just finally were allowed to unfreeze, right? So is that separate from this?
Do you want to speak to it, Brandon?
Okay.
So this freeze just applies to executive compensation.
Okay.
So the principals and vice principals are frozen, but prior to that, the salaries of principals, vice principals, and executive exempt staff had been frozen since 2009. So that was finally lifted about 2 years ago, and then we were able to provide incremental increases and also movement along the PSEC grids.
But is this just step one? Are we gonna see a motion coming forward about freezing the principals now again?
We
Okay,
haven't seen anything about this. Prior to this, this was unexpected for everybody. And,
so I'll follow up with one more question.
sorry, and just to clarify, you'll notice that it says for the 2021 performance year. So it doesn't, it only talks about the 1 year. So in this next year is what it's, the freeze is referring to. So we haven't seen any hint that it's beyond that at this point.
Yeah, that Carol Jane's letter is very clear about the fact that it's for the 2021
So
year.
when you mentioned that they want, that other districts are feeling like them, we're gonna all collaborate on like a general wage freeze. So who else, what other wage freezes have there been? What other?
For nothing within the public, within education, but within the whole public sector.
CEOs of
CEOs.
government organizations.
Yeah, but that's far, those are far different. Like, are we talking, like, did they freeze the CEO of BC Hydro? Like,
Yes.
yeah, well, that's a very different cup of water and a very different compensation package.
Exactly, and that's what I was trying to point out. There's a lot of districts.
I
that
bet you
don't-
Stephen wished he made that one.
Yeah, a lot of districts that don't even reach the $150,000 mark that's mentioned, right, for those positions. So we're in a different situation, but it does apply to us as well.
I will also say that the same government that is suggesting this just announced an election day, which is going to cost the taxpayers a lot of unnecessary funds. So if this is about cost savings, I'm not in a good mood. But I also
I
just,
think there could be a lot of timing related to this
I
recommendation.
also think it's a really bad year to do this to executive staff
Yep.
after the year they've had. It'd be like going to the principals right now and saying, oh, by the way, if you thought you might get a raise this year, if there's free. Who would say that right now to any school
Or, sorry, you're
staff
not
or
getting
anybody in
Christmas.
this room after COVID? So, yeah, I can't vote. I know it doesn't mean anything to pass this, but I think by passing it,
It sends a message.
it's sending a, yeah, we'll go along with you, BCPC. We may, yeah, I'm not comfortable with it.
Helen, I have a question.
Ida,
Now, if we pass this, one of the problems we've had in the past is the differential from the superintendent to the directors or whatever. Is this going to cause that to be a problem again?
possibly, but I really wish that we finished the in-camera before we were discussing this recommendation.
Maybe perhaps it might suggest that either that not initially,
No,
Yes,
but that
Okay.
would be a fair question in the long term.
yes. Sorry,
Is that fair to say?
yes, if the freeze goes on beyond next year, conversion and inversion is definitely going to become an issue.
Just like it was in the past.
Yes.
David?
Are we not opening a
Can
can of problems?
By saying yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna go anyway, but you know, it's nice that we pass it. But it just, I just see a whole lot of headaches and nightmares and for executive to deal with. But I'm just,
Just to clarify, the freeze has been implemented for assistant superintendents and secretary treasurers. What is not frozen at this point is superintendent salaries. The BCPC is asking for that to be considered as part of the freeze as well. So
right, they're
they've
asking
already
boards to
implemented
comply.
freezes on some staff.
Yeah.
So,
So.
And they have to ask us because we are the only,
Yes,
right,
You
whereas
are
they
the
did have
employer.
to ask us before freezing.
those guys.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the key difference. And the bottom line is that we get to make a decision about the superintendent's salary anyway.
yeah.
But
But if
It
you
is-
pass this motion and then next year gave him a raise, wouldn't you be defeating your own motion?
Yes.
yes,
Well, that'd be hard to say tonight with the room. Yeah,
I'm going to call, is there any further discussion before I call the question? Those in favor? All right. Those opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed, the recommendation as it stands, the recommended motion will not go forward from this board.
Can I say that this is the first time that I've ever been on the board that we have unanimously opposed a motion?
We're kneecapping ourselves.
This is today's day in history.
All right. Aaron, over reports of the regular committee of the whole meeting. We have no reports to bring forward at this time. Other reports. I'm turning over to Aaron. Is it my turn? It is your turn.
Okay, well, interesting things are happening in the world today. So both of our provincial council motions that we submitted for AGM this year, that when AGM was canceled, of course, are moving forward to provincial council. Those two motions are attached. I'll just speak to them briefly. One is the motion for a timely response from the teacher regulation branch. And this is, I need to stop saying so I apologize, everybody. There I go again. No, I can't stop saying. Yeah, so we are looking for a 10-year response from the teacher regulation branch to help with our staff so that they can then be paid and put on the teacher grid, payment grid, and all of that other stuff, because we have in the past lost some staff because they have not been put on a grid in a timely fashion, and this is province-wide. The other motion that we're looking at is to support teachers teaching teachers on a letter of permission teachers and non-certified teachers teaching on call, because we know that they do not having teacher education, they do require some extra supports in the classroom, which is time away from other teachers and principals and things like that. So we are looking at asking for more supports for that. The other thing is that the provincial council is on October 24th. It's a Saturday. It's via Zoom. However, today it was just announced that there will be a provincial election happening on October 24th. So given the legislation around people having enough time to go and vote and yada, 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 we haven't heard yet today if BCSTA is still going to go ahead with the provincial council meeting via Zoom on the 24th, or if they're going to move it to another weekend. That being said, so there's one person from each member board who is allowed to vote and actively participate in the provincial council meetings. You are, and it's nice that it's Zoom this year because it doesn't cost the district any money to send people down to observe. So all of the trustees are welcome to register as observers to just sort of observe what is happening on provincial council. It's going to be a little different this year. I'm not going to be sitting in my row eating wine gums and actively participating, and because it's great when you're there at the SFU Center for Dialogue and being in that space and being a part of it all. There's just something about it being there physically. So I did go to a Zoom meeting at the AGM to pass the budget. It just wasn't the same. So it won't be the same. It won't be as exciting. And it's always nice to network with other trustees across the province and see what their districts are up to and what they're doing. And of course, the Pro-D, the professional development on the Friday night and in the afternoon the next day is really good. And the discussions are great. So that will be missed. However, it's still, I think if you're able to, I think it will be a productive use of your time, because it is interesting how we as a province come together and move these motions forward for advocacy to the provincial government.
And I don't think the link to register is actually come out.
No, I haven't seen it yet. So
once we get that, anybody that wants to attend could.
Yeah.
If it happens on October the 24th, great. If they set another date, that would still be open. And one of our options would be to connect as a group via Zoom, and then we could watch Erin in action and really put the pressure on her.
I'll provide the wine gums.
As an observer, if you were speaking to our motions, observers can't speak.
No, so observers can't speak or vote, but you can, I've seen at provincial council, there's been STs who've observed, particularly from the Lower Mainland. Other trustees have observed because if they sit on the Indigenous Education Committee or the provincial learning committee, they're there anyway, so they've observed the meetings. They can pass notes to their provincial councillor, to say something. It's really interesting because I know, we talk about the motions as a board when they come out in the package, which way we should vote, but then to actually sort of be there and see it kind of happen and, the questions that other trustees ask that, oh yeah, I never thought of that. And as we discussed it at the board table and things like that, it's really quite unique and it's a lot of fun actually to be a part of that.
What I found really interesting is when you looked at all of the motions for AGM that didn't go forward last year because of COVID, boards were given a choice about where they wanted that motion to fall. And the BCSTA decided on urgency.
The Ledge Committee,
The Ledge Committee decided on urgency. Our two motions are being heard now. So there's not that many when you look at how many were put forward that have been put to be looked at on this date. The other thing, and I'm going on a sideways rant for a minute, I don't know if I can't remember if it was mentioned at NIB or not, but the BCSTA has formed a committee to look at recruitment and retention that is being headed by Tim Bennett and Gloria Jackson, who is our NIB president, has been asked to sit on that committee, and I want to thank Stephen for getting these statistics together because they did get me the statistics to show where we're pulling our teachers from to support the fact that we need more money for recruitment and the latest stats. And there's been some sharing, but I just thought I would say that one of the things that really surprised me is our neighbors to the south by the end of last year had 28 letters of permission. They're down to 8 right now. The other thing that had come up on the a call is Cornell was looking at letters of permission for unfilled positions for September, and some of the districts right now are in a position they've never been in before, and we, due to our fairly aggressive early recruiting, are in a better position than some other districts. So it hasn't gone away as a tiny issue. Sorry for that.
No, thanks.
Okay. Right, anything else to add to that? So Erin will keep us informed as to when the registration has come out, and we'll watch to see if there's any changes in dates and things. I have nothing at this point from BCPC to bring forward. Correspondence, I don't think we have any. We don't have any unfinished business. New business, we, out of the advance, suggested that what we would like to do is have a motion to set up an ad hoc pro-E committee, so I would like that motion to come forward tonight, and then we can at the committee of the whole meeting on October the 5th confirm who would like to be on that and further look at the terms of reference for that committee. So if I could get a recommendation about that, I would be very happy.
So with that.
I'll second it. Thank you. Any further discussion? Following the question, all in favor? Thank you, Ida. All right, Michelle, it's your turn.
Thank you for your patience.
I know, I wanted to jump in a number of times, but I know my place.
That's right.
So, along with a number of you, I did gone to a couple schools, and I was at Remembrance on Friday. And I have to say that on the first tour that I went before school started, and then to see it on Friday, I have no words. I'm more than impressed, and the work that the teachers and staff and quite incredible. So good job on that. And I'll be doing a lot more touch base with schools in the coming weeks. That's part of what I really feel I need to do. So you did pass this. And I just want to bring up a concern that's in my inbox every day is around teachers wanting a plexiglass barrier. And it doesn't have to be as big as this, but I had two primary teachers in my office today, and they're like, Michelle, we need something on our rainbow table when we do language type things. When you're showing formation of words, it's like, you know, shh, you're breathing and you've got the airflow, and you can't show lip formation and tongue formation with a mask on. So I've got teachers that are wanting to purchase their own plexiglass barriers, and if they could charge that to their school fund or to their classroom fund, or maybe PAC would be willing to help pay for this because it's not in here, but teachers are wanting plexiglass barriers and are willing to pay for them on their own. So I think that as a board, maybe come up with something around that. I would really appreciate it. And that's all that I have. Otherwise, it's not a, there's some rough patches, but I have to say that teachers are super happy to be in schools. And they just want some barriers, especially in the primary grades. Yeah, but you have to wear them on. They're hot. Yeah. They want to see the full face.
They have to wear a mask on the head.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yes, they do.
You have to wear a mask under the visor?
Yes.
That's appropriate, because what the visor does is the visor protects your eye region from absorbing the virus. You still need the mask or not.
What's the protocol for the speech pathologists?
They have a barrier.
Interesting.
They have a barrier, and they have a portable. It's portable. They can take it with them. And same with ELL when they do testing. They have a barrier.
Working on their mouth all day.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is I've brought up is air purifiers, and that I read an article about that today. Air purifier in the classroom because it's airborne. More than they think, not just droplets. So we've got lots of things to think about. I thought I would just ask the board to be aware that these are concerns of teachers.
Thank you. Maureen,
This time,
she's got a list.
and I'm not echoing what you say this time.
Yeah. So
However, I will echo Ellen Nicole's comments regarding the positive labor management. Very pleased to see that we have a good working relationship. And I would also like to say kudos to Michelle. We have a good working relationship as well, and that is not the case in a lot of districts. So that's good to have. We had some elections in June. I'm not going to go into most of them because a few of them just people who are already there and moved into different positions, but we have 2 brand new shop stewards, and one of them is actually a young worker, which is a worker under 30 years of age, and that's pretty exciting because it's pretty hard to get them. And it's actually a former bus student of one of our drivers, so that's pretty cool. QPBC and K-12 meetings are starting to ramp up. Got a QPBC Transportation Committee meeting in October. Going to be kind of odd to go to a Transportation Committee meeting but not use transportation to get there. So be a little different. This is actually a question for whoever can answer it. That managing change. Any of those who were unable to get into that, is there a chance, second chance to access it?
Could I ask you to forward that question to Carmine Andrews and she'll provide a response?
Yeah,
Workshop.
Managing change. I believe we were in a strategic planning meeting at the time. Couldn't be at 2 places at once. This isn't really a QP thing, but thanks for the new fuel tank at Upper Pine. That looks really nice. Took me a day before I actually realized it had been changed. Apparently my brain's still on walkabout somewhere. And the new skate shack and ice rink is looking pretty good out there. We need some drone footage of Upper Pine. I'm just gonna put that out there. We are having some challenges in keeping physical distancing on buses. drivers having to be flexible and think on their feet or on their butts, I guess, more appropriately. Some buses are fairly empty. I know my own bus is full, and I actually don't know where to put everyone else. And you know, you're driving and dealing with trying to keep the kids in their spaces, and it's so hard because they've been having to keep in their spaces all day at school. And then they get on the bus, they want to visit with their friends. So these are being a bit of a challenge, but we will figure it out. And I just wanted to comment on the MCFD grants. Very happy to hear about that. Hopefully you had a little play in that. And yeah, looking forward to seeing some additional people staff.
Teresa, it's your turn. Oh, do you need the podium?
I'm just gonna stand up because otherwise I feel like I look like Cousin Ed or something, see anything like maybe his hair sitting on my chair, so I'll stand up so I can see you. But we've been having meetings with Stephen since August, the executive, and that has been really, really helpful, especially because a lot of our jobs lately have been combating misinformation, gossip, craziness, paranoia.
Keep going, because there's some more adjectives.
I was gonna say.
General loopiness and distrust of all institutions in charge of anything in this province. So while you're all sitting there saying everything's going fine, I deal with parents who are freaking out over everything. But generally stuff is starting to hum along. We're very behind. Many PACs didn't have their AGMs in the spring. We just said, you don't have to, right? So our DFAC one is tomorrow. I'm sure you'll keep seeing me because who's gonna do this? Because now there's a lunch involved, so no one's ever gonna sign up again. So thanks a lot for that, Stephen.
It's only temporary.
Yeah. Oh, sure, it'll never come back again. Anyway, so
I read it on Facebook.
we're trying, I think that's been the most important thing about our meetings with Stephen and Helen have been really good, that we can get out in front of the information. And I think what, a lot of you're all parents too, is you realize the sort of strange divergence of information that you're getting. Like, you're getting this from the school, and then for example, speed skating has the most loopy, ridiculous, draconian set of rules ever. It's like, I'm sorry, I have to buy speed skates and an entire Scott pack for my son to skate in on the oval with 4 other skaters. So whatever information you think parents need to hear, release it 10 times more than you think is the right amount. Like, once is great, it won't be enough. 10 times isn't gonna be enough. There's a lot of misinformation that people are dealing with. We knew that in the Russian community. They were dealing with stuff that never came up for English speakers. And fortunately, we had a member of our executive who got on top of that. But this was very strange stuff. So overall, I think people are all right. As PACs this year, we're going to say, don't focus on selling chocolates. It's impossible to sort them. We can't touch them anyway. And we're just going to try to counsel everybody. Don't worry about the stuff you normally worry about. Worry about school feeling normal and happy and a safe place for your kids. Because I think the kids are all doing better than the parents. And that's definitely the sense that I get, is most kids that are doing very well. The high school has a lot of weird growing pains that it's going through, but I think we have North Peace PAC meeting tomorrow night, so we'll eavesdrop on that, and then we'll go from there. I do want to share one story of one of my son's friends at North Peace who's attending a royal class for 10 straight days. Do you realize it? Mother got a phone call saying your son's not in class. He said, yes, I am. I'm there every day.
Yeah, my daughter was in the wrong class for the first couple of days.
There you go, yeah, so.
But I'm doing really well.
Yeah. I don't know why you're in interpretive dance. You're supposed to be in that. So anyway, so just, and for trustees, it's great to hear that you're reaching out to your schools. Please reach out to your PACs. Please do, especially like in October, once they've had their first PAC meetings and they're starting to function, and just reach out to them lots, because having you come is always really beneficial. Like, it's like SUPAC, it's just so useful to be able to talk to the people who are making the decisions. And I think that the more information we have, the calmer things are. And we will continue to battle this information one wing nut at a time. And I think
It
that's.
doesn't have to be politically correct. I quite like it. Don't put that.
Listen, lady, I was like the 90th thing on your agenda tonight, so you know. Be nice. Dang it. So I think that's about all. But we're very, like, Deepak, we'd like to hear from you. We would love to be called and for you to come to our meetings and things like that. And so we really are great with, we've told that to Stephen, you can send people to us if they have like questions that we can answer. We're very happy to do that. So we'll definitely have a few strange pack meetings, I think, to start with, like especially explain to that woman, you're not on that pack anymore. Your kid doesn't go to that school. No, you can't have an executive position. Your kid's not at that school.
I wonder where that came from.
So, you know, so we're trying our best, you know, we can be helpful to you, just let us know. And our AGM is tomorrow.
Well, I might pop by
No,
tomorrow.
Supak.
What time, dear? 11?
11.
Okay.
So
I might pop by just to say.
I talked to my executive, they said next week is totally fine. Yeah, they were like, that's great, that's no problem at all, so.
I have down twice in my books.
Lunch, I mean, that's, to me, it's the worst thing in the.
I know.
This whole thing. is
So that's why I signed up actually in April and May. It's not really because I'm working,
Right.
it's because hopefully by then they'll have lunch back.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
Teresa, could I just ask that you check in with Sharon for future SUPAC dates to make sure we're not out of alignment for other months as well?
Sure. Yeah.
Because those are set for the year now.
Okay. But PACs, as you know, in general, can be pretty flexible about stuff.
No problem.
We're
Just
just
check-
sort of rolling
just-
on those.
Just so we're on the same page for the future.
Sure.
meetings.
See if you're out of sync with us the entire year. Great job, Stephen. I believe you. Okay.
It's not
So
perfect.
Teresa, if you have a DTAC,
Yes,
this whole the whole pack thing,
it is our AGM.
no, I know, but tell the packs to check their bylaws. Because
Yes,
that was the whole issue, the bylaws does not state something totally different.
we have been, for lack of a better word, harping on the bylaw thing for 3 years.
Wow.
Is just, you know, and so now we're, you know, over the last 3 years, we've gotten a lot of updated sets of bylaws. And yeah, and then sometimes we'll go through them, and that one I obviously didn't see. Who knew this was going to become an issue? But no, you can't ask for bylaws enough, they're really important. And if you want to see all the school's bylaws, I have a lot of them in my file.
Well, they're on the website though.
They
aren't
should be, yeah,
Yeah, that's.
they should be, but that's it.
Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hopefully you get your position again. Thank you for
Oh,
all your hard work.
yes, it's always such a bloodbath, isn't it, to see who's going to be in charge of something.
I remember doing a couple of those DPAC AGMs, and it was like, as a trustee, and everybody's like, who wants to be secretary? Nobody puts their hand up.
I
It's
know,
like cricket.
Crawling into the
Yeah,
table.
I'm just waiting for a whole lack of eye contact tomorrow, it's gonna be a lot of this, and.
Yeah.
Yeah, normally we have about 18 people, and tomorrow I think we're only expecting 8.
And how many positions do you have? 8?
Yeah. We, our secretary is not returning, and then, so we have the 4 executive positions to fill.
Well, good luck.
We need good luck, like, hopefully I get out of it.
Whichever way you want.
See you next
So-
I don't think there are any questions on board from the press and public here. So, because we haven't finished our in camera, we can't bring our motion forward for implementation. So what I will need is a motion to move back into camera and say goodbye to our guests. Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work. You too. Thank you.